Today's Rambam, Ilchus Maaser, Perik Aleph, Halacha Aleph. He writes, Achash Mafrishin Truma Gedela. After we are Mafrish Truma Gedela, so which is what you give to the Kohen, and it's called Truma Gedela as opposed to Trumas Maaser, which we do afterwards. The Levi does, at least could do, or is required to do. Yisrael can do it too, but nevertheless, after you mafresh that Truma Gedela, and that Truma Gedela really has no shear, although there are shearim given of 1/40th, 1/50th, 1/60th. Then your mafresh here starts again the real amounts. Echad me'asara, 1/10. Mina nishar, what's left over. V'zeu anikra Maaser rishon. This is called Maaser rishon. Uvay ne'amar, and there it says, Ki es Maaser b'nei Yisrael, ashirim al Hashem, the Maaser that we give. And that's what it's referring to. Even though it says Yirim el Hashem, it's not holy and so forth. Leviim. This Maaser goes to the Leviim. So Rambam Paskins clearly, this Maaser goes to the Leviim. Zacharim, Unekeves, male, female, and he brings a pasuk for that. Okay. Now, just to note, although the Rambam says so, the Gemara has a machlokes about Kiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Kiva says Maaser rishon goes to the Levi, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says to the Kohen, not to the Levi. Then the Gemara says no, it means also to the Kohen. Goes to the Kohen and to the Levi. Now, when the Torah said to give Maaser rishon, didn't mean dafke to the Levi, it mean to the Shevet Levi, and the Kohen is part of Shevet Levi. Kohen is called a Levi in many cases. Rabbi Kiva says no, does not go to the Kohen. It doesn't belong to the Kohen. It belongs to the Levi. It goes to the Levi. It's important to note this because of the next thing that we're going to learn. Now, the Rambam waits 4 halachas. I mean, not 4 halachas, 3 halachas till halacha dalet to tell us a point which we're going to learn soon. But he starts off that halacha with a separate thing. Ein moitziin ha'maaser miyad hakohen. What happens to the kohen who happens to have who planted a field and therefore owns the produce and therefore has to give Maaser? We'll learn out that you have to give, everyone has to give the Maaser. So, but you don't take it away from him. He keeps it. You only take from the Jews, the regular Jews. You don't take it from Kohen. Now again, he has to be mafresh. You just don't take it. You don't give it to the Levi. He keeps it. Now here the Rambam adds another look. What this is doing here is we're talking about Maaser. We're not talking about Hilchos Matnas Kuna. There's enough Matnas Kuna before. That's where you could have said it. No, here. Don't take away from a Kohen to a Kohen. The Ezra Kana, now here comes, boom, after he's gone through so much and spoke so much about 3 halachas about giving to the Levi and all the different halachas. Now suddenly he reminds himself that wait, not so much. The Ezra Kana says Leviim bismanoi. Ezra made a knas for Leviim in his time, which we obviously have to note. What is that? I'm trying to say, well, when else did he make a knas, if not bismanoi? So some say, yeah, it means to say that in his time he made it, but it's forever. And as we'll see, there are many other explanations. I came across about 8, 9, 10, quite a few, but we're not going to go through the whole. Don't worry. You should not give To Lohan, Maaser, you shouldn't give Maaser to the Leviim. Eliyanosan leKohanim should be given to the Kohanim. Lefi shalai olu imer Yerushalayim. Because he punished them, so to speak, because they did not go up to Yerushalayim with him. So there's a lot of questions on that. I mean, why did their children suffer? He made a knas for the Leviim that didn't come up with him. They didn't come up. So why did the next generation have to suffer? They didn't do anything wrong, and we don't punish kids for their fathers' the discrepancies. So that's why many want to say that the Rambam is being medayik the word bizmanoi. It was only a knas for his time, but there's a big problem with that. If it was only bizmanoi, then the Gemara tells stories clearly of things that happened way later, where Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar and Azariah were way after Ezra. And the Gemara tells a story about that. So someone has say that Bismanoi is a long time. The whole Bayis Sheni is called Bismanoi. But it doesn't solve the problem of how did he do that. But the bigger problem with the Rambam is that it seems that he's going against what the Gemara says. Because the Gemara says that there's a machlekes, as we said, between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Elazar and Azariah. And Rabbi Akiva holds that it doesn't belong to Kohanim. So it doesn't say, and the Gemara tells us the following story. Listen to the story. That's an interesting story. There was a lady, who had a garden, ginsa. She was a ginsa. And her property bordered a cemetery. Obviously, the entrance wasn't from the cemetery. The entrance was from the street. And Rabbi Elazar and Azariah used to go there and collect his Maaser rishon. Rabbi Elazar and Azariah was a kohen. Rabbi Akiva, who didn't agree with the fact that Rabbi Elazar and Azariah was taking the Maaser rishon and for himself, which again obviously seems to say that Rabbi Akiva did not hold that you can take away Maaser rishon from the Leviim and give it to the Kohanim. And according to many, at best you can say he gave it to both of them. That was Rabbi Akiva learns the knas was that he allowed Kohanim to take, and there are certain conditions. Again, I'm not going into the details because there's a lot of different opinions. But it's obvious of this Gemara that Rabbi Akiva did not agree, and we'll see soon. Something that's even more astounding. So Rabbi Akiva went, not being happy with what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was doing, and he closed off the entrance to her property from the street and opened it only from the cemetery, which didn't allow Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah to go in. And he said, so the Gemara asked, well, but why not? It's a knas. So first they argue what the knas was, but then the Gemara says, then the Gemara goes on and says, why did he do this? So he said, this is what he said. You make up your mind. If you're taking it because it's a knas, then you have a right to it. But if you're taking it because of your opinion that it belongs to you, then you shouldn't, and then I'm not letting you take it. You have no right to it. And it is a pella. Who cares why he's taking it? If Ezra said he can take it, even according to Rabbi Akiva, so why do you have to have a special kavanah? I should take it l'shem yichud, that I'm not taking it because I hold it's mine. I'm taking it because it's a knas. Who cares? So I mean, when did we ever hear of such a thing? That there's a difference how I take it. There's a difference why I take it. I take it. It's mine. That's a big question. So there are those who want to say from here, he meant to say you shouldn't be taking it. Finished. or at least you shouldn't be taking it for yourself. We'll say. The Rikurkis was a Pirish on the Rambam from the early version of the Rambam, probably from the earliest. He says, how? If we pass like Rabbi Akiva, that it belongs to Leviim, how do you come along, Ezra, and say, sorry, Torah, putting you to the side now, I'm making a knas, it's going to the kohanim. But what happened to the mitzvah Maaser rishon? You got to give it to the kohen. You got to give it to the Levi. You're not making your mitzvah. What do you do? He was oika the mitzvah of Maaser rishon. It's a pella. What's going on there? They both can have. So, okay. He said, only give them. According to Rabbi Akiva, that it doesn't belong to the kohanim. It only belongs to Leviim. So what's Ezra doing? Taking away the mitzvah? And others ask stronger. Why the kohanim? Give it to Anim, give it to the others. I mean, there's such an opinion that it belongs to Anim. Why did he do that? That is the Ritva. Also, the Ritva and Yevamos asked the same question. Since with the rice, according to Akiva, it's Leviim, how could he make a knas? How can Ezra make knas to give to kohanim? They weren't kind the mitzvah. So the Ritva comes up with his famous concept, which is brought down many places, of hefker bezin hefker, that bezin has a right to be mafka things. Okay, that's great, but how does that make a mitzvah? How do you become the mitzvah in the sinner? They can take away the. In other words, there is two issues here. Okay, there are two issues. One is that that the Leviim have a right to it, financial right. Of them, hefker bezin can take away that. But there's a second part. You have to make mitzvahs of Maaser rishon. How did the hefker bezin doesn't create a mitzvah? Another problem that I have in the wording of the Rambam, as I said before, why did he wait to halacha dalet? Should have right away told us when he said you give it to the Leviim. However, be aware, Ezra made a knas. Okay. So perhaps that the Rambam waited to halacha dalet for a very important reason. Because he starts off halacha dalet with a statement. So before I go there. No. So the Rambam says, don't take away Maaser rishon from the kohen. And he says, all matnas kahunas like that. What do you mean? What does this have to do with matnas kahuna? So perhaps the Rambam is here telling us that even Rabbi Akiva, who holds that the Yisrael has a mitzvah to give it to the Levi, not the Kohen, but the fact that the Kohen keeps it indicates that this is also it also belongs to a Kohen. That's not the mitzvah for the regular Yisrael to do, but a Kohen having Maaser rishon is considered doing the mitzvah of Maaser rishon. The Kohen fulfilled the mitzvah by keeping it. It's like all matnas kahuna. So what we see from here is that there is a Kohen is not a stranger. He's not like a poor person to Maaser rishon. He's not like some guy off the street. He has some connection at a Maaser rishon. The Ritva, when he answers hefker bezin hefker, and as I told you, people ask, what kind of hefker bezin? How did I become mitzvah? He adds one line that is as difficult as the first one, but at least I believe he's coming to answer those questions. And he writes, V'os kishluchem shel Leviim. He made them the agents, the shluchim of the Leviim. Oh, somehow or another, when they're taking, there is a fulfillment of the mitzvah of Maaser rishon, because you are giving it to the Leviim through the kohanim. They become the shluchim. Okay, so the Achreinim ask, well, how can you be a shlich? The guy doesn't want you to be a shlich. You take it, you keep it for yourself, and you're a shlich. The answer to that, perhaps, is what the Rambam says, because the kohanim are, even according to Rabbi Akiva, do have a connection to Maaser rishon to the point that they can keep it to themselves. Ein mitzian ha'maaser miyad ha'kohanim. Oh, they can be shluchim for the Shevet Levi to get it. The Leviim may not get it. That's a knas. That's a knas. That's the chiddush of the Rambam. If that is true, then you can fulfill the mitzvah in the sin. What do you have to be nafka? Because there's a financial dindu. Financially, the person can take away the financial source. Besides the mitzvah, ultimately you can be mekayim the mitzvah because they are shayich to the mitzvah. Perhaps, and this is what I want to add to the line, nobody here is assuming that the kohanim are going to totally keep it for themselves. Perhaps that's another aspect of what the Ritva is referring to. The knas is, it goes to the kohanim as agents of the Leviim. They are in control. They can decide to give or not. For instance, the Rikurkas asked another question. The Leviim need this. This is what they live with. This is their life, and they work in the Beis Hamikdash. So what happened to the What happened to the Leviim that didn't work in the Beis Hamikdash? They had nothing to eat. They starved. No, the kohanim needed them. The kohanim took care of them, but it was the kohanim who had to decide to give. And there's a Havamina that the kohanim gave and took care of them, but it wasn't theirs. It got through the kohanim. That's shot when Rabbi Akiva went and shut and turned the door from the street to the Beis HaKvaros so that Rabbi Elazar Nazari shouldn't go in. And he said to him, decide why you're taking. Oh, if you're taking because it's yours, you have no right to take. If you're taking as a shliach of the Leviim, that's what he means when he says if you're taking B'Teres K'nasa. Yes, it's negeya how you're taking. You're taking because you believe that you have a right to it because it's yours and you can take. You have no right. Chacham never give you that right. They only gave you a right as a shliach of the Leviim. As a shliach of the Leviim, you got to know that I'm taking it on that in that manner. Then you have to take it for a knas. So that works out beautifully. So the Rambam Faket, he is trying to bring out all the problems that there are is solved by the Rambam. That the knas, yes, the mitzvah is to give to the Leviim. However, ultimately you can be mekayim it through the kohanim because the kohanim are also part of Shevet Levi. However, that's not the way it should be done. It belongs to the Leviim. Hefker bezin hefker takes away the financial right of the Leviim, but because the kohanim are also connected to it. How do we know they're connected to it? Because they can keep it on their own. That means that now you mekayim the mitzvah by giving it to them. Since there's no financial obligation, the mitzvah gives this kaim from that. And that's why the Rambam brings it in Halacha Dalet. At the same time, the question now, what are the Leviim going to live off? Kohanim will take care of them. It's their responsibility. It's theirs. It's to give. They're on behalf. They're taking it on behalf of the community, of the Leviim too. Do they have to give it? It's their prerogative. But obviously, because the Leviim are going to work in the base of Mikdash, well, they'll give it to them if they want. But very likely they do give. Then when you take it, you got to take it as a shliach because that's your only schus. You're taking it on behalf. You're taking it on behalf. That's the way they gave you the right to it, as the Ritva says. If you're taking it for yourself, meaning for yourself as you are a kohen and not as you are somebody who is connected to the Leviim, then you lost your schus. You don't have a shlichus anymore. Okay. I want to just add a little drush to this whole part. I give a shir in the local community here. I'm giving it for 30 years already. And I spoke about this Rambam. And I brought in, there's a sikha on part of that's negayah to this Rambam, is the Rambam brings in Hilchas Malachim. We spoke about this already in one of our shurim, that the way mitzvahs developed, so to speak, is there were Sheva mitzvah Nayach, and then came along Avram. And it says, Bo Avram, and he was told the mitzvah Milah. And he davened Shachas. And Yitzchak was mafresh Maaser. So the Ravid argues, he says, he should have said it differently. Bo Avram, when it's Tava, and he had the mitzvah, and he was mafresh Maaser. And Yitzchak added mincha, whatever, but he didn't add Maaser. Why? Because Avraham says in the parsha of Lech Lecha that he gave Shem all his Maaser. So there's a lot of answers given. The Rebbe in Chelik Hey comes along and he says that it was a different type of Maaser. It was a Maaser from Mechames Midian. And then in the end, he wants to say you learn from both Maasers. Just to note that the Maharal in Gurari says that Yitin le Maaser Mikael doesn't mean from the war only, Mikael Ashalei. So, and especially, he has a rayas to that. He brings his rayas. And so therefore, according to the Maharal, at least, he was probably giving him everything. He was giving him also Maaser Daga. Now, Rashi states, why did he give it to him? Because he was a Kohen. So the Panami office asks, so brings a raya from here to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Then we see that Maaser rishon goes all to kohanim. If not, what was he going to give it to a Kohen? And this doesn't mean Trumas Maaser, because it says Maaser. Not only from the Maaser, but from everything. So again, and this is the Rush, perhaps this is based on what we said. Of course, you should be giving to a lady, but there was no lady. And as we learn, a Kohen has a shaykhis to Maaser, even according to Rabbi Akiva. So in such a case, you give to the Kohen. Why is it relevant to us? Could be this was the Maaser of a similar bonim that Ezra should be able to make a knas and give it only to the Kohen. Because this happened already, that's why it can happen again. And that's why Ezra was able to do it. Anyway, that's the idea in the Rambam. Everybody have a great day. Atzlach Rabbi Moshe.